Justin. Let's go ahead and pray, and then we'll start. Okay, Lord, thank you so much just for this morning. Thank you for this time. Pray, Lord, that this would be beneficial and profitable, and that you would be glorified overall. Thank you again so much for who you are and for what you give to us. For it's in your Son's name, Amen. Okay, let's go ahead and jump into our discourse as we're looking at Nebuchadnezzar and chapter 4, and again his testimony about what the Lord has done for him, the signs and wonders that he's displayed for Nebuchadnezzar. We are on the timeline of Daniel. We just discussed several weeks ago Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they're standing before the image, right? The image, what I believe is Marduk. We fast forwarded 20 years into kind of ahead of that particular scenario or that event that took place, and we are probably at the cusp of the death of Nebuchadnezzar. And he is detailing this by way of Daniel, I believe. And this is right before he's passed away, that he might be detailing this or recording this to put in the annals of Babylonian history. Again, Nebuchadnezzar, from what we looked at last week, Nebuchadnezzar is troubled once more, again, about a dream that he had. And he consults with his diviners and wise men, and comes to find out that they don't even know what this dream is about. In this one, he tells them the dream, whereas the first one in chapter 2, he doesn't give them anything at all. He says, "You need to tell me what this is." But now he tells it to his prefects, chief prefects, and all that, and they can't seem to disclose what this means. However, due to the fact that Daniel has a unique God that is not Marduk or any of the other ones, he is assured that Daniel will be able to give him the explanation of the dream when all the other wise men have failed to do so. We are looking at our pertinent questions for chapter 4. If you remember when we did kind of the discourse and looked at Daniel, generally speaking, each question has, or each chapter has certain questions that we're asking. One of them, why does King Nebuchadnezzar write in Daniel's book? I think that's been pretty clearly answered, although we will come back to this and kind of re-rack this because I think it's important. And two, why is this historical account placed here? Why isn't it placed earlier or later? Right? I think that there is a reason for this. And we'll kind of talk about that as we explore this, the rest of this chapter. Let's go ahead and jump into verse 9 of chapter 4 of Daniel and read the following here. It says, O Belshazzar, chief of the magicians, since I know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you and no mystery baffles you, tell me the visions of my dream, which I have seen, along with the interpretation. Nebuchadnezzar here mentioned in his statement that there is a divine and unique God that recognizes, that Daniel recognizes. Remember, he used the word holy in this. This was somewhat unique. They all believed that the gods were divine. They knew that they were greater than them. But this God that Nebuchadnezzar recognizes of Daniel is very distinct from all the other ones. He seems to be different. And Nebuchadnezzar recognizes that, although he doesn't recognize God personally. He does recognize that there's something unique about Daniel's God that all of the other gods don't have. And he says, no mystery baffles or constrains him, right? He's been able to explain these things pretty easily. So Nebuchadnezzar begins to give him the details of the dream. It's almost kind of like he says, basically these gods, they can't answer it. So I'm going to go to the revealer of mysteries, and I'm going to tell this dream to you, and you'll be able to give it to me because this God has done this before, right? So tell me the visions of my dream which I have seen, along with its explanation. Verse 10. Now these were the visions in my mind as I lay on my bed, and I was looking, and behold, there was a tree in the midst of the earth, and its height was great. So Nebuchadnezzar begins to describe the dream to Daniel, which is in contrast to Daniel 2, where Daniel describes the dream to Nebuchadnezzar, right? This time, Nebuchadnezzar, just like he does with his other leadership, describes the dream, and he begins to give the details. And then he mentions, as he begins to basically explain these details, that there was a tree in the midst of the land, and its height was great. If you want to get someone's attention, you just create big things. In chapter 2, we had a big statue. In Daniel 4, we have a big tree, right? And I would presume that this tree is essentially the size of the statue. It is massive, huge. And it's in the middle of the land, or the earth. Verse 11. The tree grew large and became strong in its height, reached to the sky, and it was visible to the end of the whole earth. So the tree started off large in the first place, and then it grew from there. So it didn't start off small. It was already large, and then it grew larger from there. So much so that there was no place that you can go throughout the entire land where you could not see this tree and its massive size. Nebuchadnezzar continues to detail and mention the specifics of a tree that, again, that grew large and became very strong and powerful. And then he also mentioned how tall the tree was to the sky, or the heavens, and it was visible to the entire earth. Now let's go ahead and discuss some of the nature and the description of this tree, because Nebuchadnezzar gives Daniel some details here as he's recalling the past, right, of during this time. First, we have the fruit of the tree was for all creatures. That's verse 12. It says, verse 11, the tree grew large and became strong, and its height reached to the heavens of the sky, and it was visible to the end of the whole earth. Its foliage was beautiful, and its fruit abundant, and it was food for all. And the beasts of the field again found shade under it. Oh, there we go. So it was food for the creatures, and the beasts of the field that had shade from the heat, essentially from the sun, with this tree. It says the nest also the nests were also for the branches for the birds. That's verse 12 again. And all the birds of the sky dwelt in its branches, and all the living creatures were fed from this particular tree. So this tree sustained all of the animals, apparently. Right? Then we have verse 13 of chapter 4. It says, as I was looking in the visions in my mind, as I lay on my bed, and behold, an angelic watcher, a holy one, descended from heaven. This is interesting. Let's take a look at this word watcher. The word is ear. This word occurs 3 times in the scriptures, 3 times in the book of Daniel, okay, with its first occurrence being here. And this word corresponds with the Hebrew word or, which means to stir up or to awake, right? So this watcher or this watching being has the sole purpose of essentially coming and detailing what is going on here within this particular dream here. This underscores the divine being that appears and gives a particular message to Nebuchadnezzar. He describes this watcher as a divine being, one that comes from the heavens. He begins to express this particular being and the quality of this watcher as it being holy, set apart, divine, and the origin of this being from heaven. Let's continue here. As he's watching and looking at this particular being or watcher, this host from heaven, this host details a couple of things. I'll start at verse 13 again. As I was looking in the visions of my mind, as I lay on my bed, and behold, an angelic watcher, a holy one, I lost my place. Okay, descended from heaven. He shouted and spoke as follows: chop down the tree and cut off its branches, strip all of its foliage and scatter its fruit. Let the beast flee from under it, and the birds from its branches. Yet leave the stump with its roots yet in the ground, but with a band of iron and bronze around it. This is interesting because, again, this follows the same trajectory of the details that Nebuchadnezzar talked about. First of all, the tree, again, was large and huge. Could you imagine cutting down a tree that reaches to the ends of the earth? That's kind of, it's visible from there. That's a huge tree, right, to cut down, right? He talks about the foliage, right? That not only were they to cut down the tree and cut off all of its branches, but to strip the leaves, the foliage from it. That is paralleled to verse 11. Then it talks about the beasts, or the fruit of it. Scatter its fruit, basically destroy the fruit. Take it off of the tree and just scatter the fruit. So the fruit dies too. Again, this is paralleled with verse 12. Let the beast flee from under it. So the beasts that were gathering shade from this tree are now scattered because the tree is cut down. Again, this is paralleled also with verse 12. And then the birds from its branches as well, which is also paralleled with verse 12. So they were to cut down the tree, cut it off. They were to strip off the leaves and scatter the fruit of it. They were to, the animals were to scatter away from the tree and leave it, as well as the birds from the branches. And just leave nothing but the stump there. Let's talk about the stump for a second. In verse 15, we see that the watcher says this. It says, yet leave the stump with its roots in the ground. So just cut the tree, but don't cut the roots. Leave the roots there and leave the stump there. The watcher says to leave the stump, verse 15, a band of iron and bronze around the tree. Why is that there? Again, the stump would share in the vegetation of the field. That is, the stump would share in the foliage and the fruit that has been scattered along with the beasts. And the stump would be drenched with the morning dew and would share the grass of the earth with the beast. Now, this is kind of interesting here because the language gets kind of weird, right? So notice here in verse 15, it says, yet leave the stump with its roots in the ground, right? We're obviously talking about a tree here. Yeah, but with the band of iron and bronze around it, in the new grass of the field, and let him be drenched with the dew of heaven. What? A tree being described as him? That's some funny business, right? As far as I know, there's been no human beings in this dream, right? All we have is trees, animals, and birds. That's it, right? And yet we see that this tree has been given agency. It's been referred to as a him. Matter of fact, twice. It says, let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him share in the beast in the grass of the earth. This is talking about the stump of the tree. I could see why Nebuchadnezzar at this point in his account would be sort of puzzled at the language. So here's a supplemental question here. What in the world is this iron and bronze around the tree? Why is this here? Well, if you recall, they weren't supposed to take the stump. They weren't supposed to cut that off, but leave the roots in the ground, right? And to put a band around the stump. Why is this? Well, this practice of putting a band, whether it be a metal band or something else like that, it actually preserves the tree itself, okay? So that the tree won't die, okay? And be destroyed. So the stump is preserved. Its life is preserved, right? Well, trees don't have life, but it's preserved essentially. Whoops. Let's go to chapter 4, verse 15. Again. And let him be drenched with the dew of heaven, and let him share with the beasts in the grass of the earth. This word is halak, this Aramaic word, share. This Aramaic word has a pronominal, again, which is in the third person, singular, masculine form, which is that him right there. Let him share. That it's the same way, it's the same word here, right? The pronominal, third person, singular, masculine form. Let him share with the beast of the beast in the grass of the earth, and let him be drenched with the dew of heaven. Fascinating language here. Then we get more detail with the same pronominal here in verse 16. And let his mind be changed from that of a man, and let a beast's mind be given to him. This is talking about the stump, right? The stump gets a mind like a beast. What? Again, that's a head scratcher. Then we see 7 periods of time would pass over him. This is verse 16. Let's before we get there, let's look at this word period for a minute, because I want to touch on that. The command was given by the holy watchers, underscoring this word about the stump came from on high. This is verse 17. The sentence is by the decree of the angelic watchers And the decision is a command of the holy ones in order that the living may know that the Most High is the ruler over all the realm of mankind. Let's discuss this word periods for a minute. This word period is the Hebrew word idan. Okay? The Aramaic word occurs 13 times in the scriptures. Okay? And it only occurs here in the book of Daniel. This word means a time or a period. So 7 periods or seven time. In this context, this word emphasizes 7 set periods of time or 7 years. So this particular stump is going to have the mind of a beast for 7 years. 7 years. That's a long time. That's a long time. I mean, I get impatient after 7 minutes. 7 years? Again, of course, we know what happens during the course of this chapter. But it's important to stop and look at the details here, to kind of stop and smell the roses or smell the dew, right? Because these details are important. We ought not to skip this. There's some odd language going on here, and all of this has a purpose. Okay? So even though we kind of know how the story goes, it's good to sit back and kind of think about these things. It says the command was given by the holy watchers, underscoring this word about the stump came from on high. Let's talk about the point of the vision. Daniel again mentioned the entire point of this vision that Nebuchadnezzar was given in order that the living may know that the Most High is the ruler over the realm of man. That's a pretty big statement. Because at this point, who is the King of Kings? Nebuchadnezzar. Who is the one that everyone recognizes? Nebuchadnezzar. Whenever Nebuchadnezzar speaks, that's what it is, right? That the whole world itself recognizes Nebuchadnezzar. So that means if the whole world recognizes Nebuchadnezzar, then the whole world at this particular time recognizes Marduk. Or at least acknowledges him, right? That Nebuchadnezzar believes that Marduk gave him, installed him as the king of Babylon, that Nebuchadnezzar is the one that preserves that Marduk is the one that preserves Nebuchadnezzar's life. Nebuchadnezzar believes this. That Nebuchadnezzar believes that Marduk is the one that protects Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar believes that Marduk is the one who handed Nebuchadnezzar's dad the kingdom. And this particular picture, this particular vision, this dream that Nebuchadnezzar has, the sole purpose of him having this, according to the Watcher, is so that not just Nebuchadnezzar would know, but that the living may know, that everyone would know that the Most High is the ruler over the realm of man. And he bestows it, that is the kingdoms, on whomever he wishes and sets it over the lowliest of men. This is quite a statement. This statement is underscored that the rule of Marduk, being the Lord of heaven and earth, is fake. And that is, it is the God of heaven who establishes kings and kingdoms. This is a direct slap in the face. This is the direct charge of Marduk. And since Marduk doesn't exist, God can't go to Marduk and slap him. Guess who gets slapped? Let's look at the Enuma Elish. Remember, this is the document that Nebuchadnezzar had to read once a year during the festival of Atiku, the new year. It says, let them, that is the name of Marduk, be held in remembrances, and let the first man proclaim them. That is the first man who was created by Marduk's blood, remember? Let the wise and the understanding consider the names of Marduk together. Let the father repeat them and teach them to his son. Remember, this is what the priest also proclaimed to the people of Babylon when Nebuchadnezzar left to Barsippa, right? To go to the temple of Nebo. And as he was reading the Enuma Elish, the priest was reading the Enuma Elish to the citizens of Babylon. The father was to repeat them and teach them to his son. Let them be in the ears of the pastor and the shepherd. So in the temple, at temple Babylon, they were to teach this and instruct this. Let a man rejoice in Marduk, the Lord of the gods, that he may cause his land to be fruitful, and that he himself may have prosperity. His word stands fast. His command is unaltered. The utterance of his mouth hath no God ever canceled. Yeah. This statement right here that the Watcher says, we're going to find out if it can't be canceled. He gazed in his anger. He turned not his neck. When he is wrathful, no God can stand his indignation. Nebuchadnezzar is going to find out real quick that Marduk doesn't exist. Remember the tablet of Nebuchadnezzar. Again, another historical document here. Again, wrote down for our investigation and our thinking in this discourse. It says, I am Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, the exalted prince, the favorite of the god Marduk, the beloved of the god Nebu. To Marduk, my lord, I make petition, supplication. O eternal prince, he's saying this about Marduk, the Lord of all being, guide in a straight path the king whom thou loves and whose name thou hast proclaimed as was pleasing to thee. I am the prince, the favorite, the creature of thy hand. You made me and you installed me to be the king of Babylon. You see, Nebuchadnezzar's pride isn't, because he has a nice car or a chariot, right? That's not where the source of his pride comes from. The source of his pride doesn't come from the fact that, he just has, a nice wardrobe. That's not where the source of his pride comes from. The source of his pride comes from the fact that he believes that he's the chosen one of Marduk. That's where his pride comes from. That he looked out upon this. Look at what I've built. Look at what I built. The installation, the exaltation of my influence and what Marduk has allowed me to do. That's the source of Nebuchadnezzar's pride. Thou hast created me and entrusted me with dominion over all people. According to thy favor, Lord, according to thy favor, according to your pleasure, you've done this, which you dost bestow on all people, cause me to love your exalted lordship. Create in my heart the worship of your divinity, and grant whatever is pleasing to thee, because you have my life. That is a crazy statement to make, but it's a serious one by Nebuchadnezzar. This is why from chapters 1 to 3, he was so obstinate, adamant. Yeah, your God is cool, but he ain't Marduk, though. There's no way he's like Marduk. Because if he was Marduk, he would have installed me here. The whole point of this statement is the whole point of the dream here. That hinges upon this statement that God is going to display that he's the Most High and not this deity, this false deity. Which brings us to chapter 4, verse 18. Here. This is the dream which I, King Nebuchadnezzar, have seen. Now you, Belshazzar, tell me its interpretation, inasmuch as none of the wise men of my kingdom is able to make known to me the interpretation. But if you are able, for a spirit of the holy gods is in you. Interesting statement. You know, it's kind of an interesting admission here of King Nebuchadnezzar concerning his quote unquote wise men, right? I don't know. You can't get kind of the feeling here. You can't read tone sometimes in the text, but I would presume, based upon just kind of how they failed him in the past, it's kind of like, you know, and as much as the wise men can't tell me, you know, but I'm sure you're able to make known to me the dream because you've done this before. We're doing the time warp again, right? We've been through this before. So you can tell me, right? The wise men really aren't that wise. After Nebuchadnezzar told Daniel the details of the vision, which he, of course, told him, and after he told Daniel that his wise men could not explain the vision to him, he now had anticipated Daniel giving him the explanation based on the details of the vision, and he mentions that you are able, not that you might be able, not that you could possibly do this, but you are able to do this. For the spirit of the holy gods is in you. Again, this language harkens back to the previous verse, the previous statement that he made, right? There's something unique about your God that I can't quite put my finger on, but I know that he can tell me this. I know that you can tell me this because you have his spirit in you. We will stop here. I still have 10 minutes, but I won't hold you. Okay? The wise men cannot give the explanation. We have gotten to the point where they're useless at this point. And, they just kind of shrug their shoulders now. Another one, let's just cut this short. We can't tell you, right? They can't give the explanation of Nebuchadnezzar's vision, even though Nebuchadnezzar tells them the details. Okay? Daniel, like Nebuchadnezzar, gave the details to him and now expects Daniel, who has the spirit of the gods, to explain the dream to Nebuchadnezzar. Right? That is the whole entire goal here. And we find that, again, the stump that is described in the dream it refers to somebody, but at this point, Nebuchadnezzar doesn't know who or what it refers to. Ladies and gentlemen, that's all I got. We will get into the explanation of the dream by Daniel and the impact that this has on Nebuchadnezzar next week. Let's go ahead and pray, and then we will close out here. Lord, this is a short teaching, but it is an important one. Looking at the details of the dream and how it plays out and how it gets unraveled, and some of the details within this dream are important. We still know how the story ends and how the narrative ends, of course. But it is important to understand that this has more to do with the false deity that Nebuchadnezzar worships and admires and esteems and regards, more than it has to do with Nebuchadnezzar himself. I thank you, Lord, that you are indeed the God, the only God. There is no other. There's no one else. And that you are a God who is merciful and compassionate, not just to the Israelites, but also to us and Nebuchadnezzar. Thank you again so much for who you are and for what you do for us. For it's in your Son's name.